Is ASEAN useless? If you were to believe the dominant media, then ASEAN should have closed shop years ago. But here's the thing, the very same media scrambles to report on ASEAN Summit every year. Why is that so? Because ASEAN works. But ASEAN works differently from other organizations. Let us pull back the curtain and take a peek inside and see what makes it tick. ASEAN's performance is driven by the interaction of three components. The first component is tribes. The second is the ASEAN chair. And the third is a process. Now, as far as tribes are concerned, there are three tribes that play a role in ASEAN. The first tribe is what I call the ASEANites. They are officials and diplomats from the ASEAN member countries and the ASEAN Secretariat. They're a fun-loving group. It's almost like a karaoke club. But don't get me wrong, they're great diplomats too. But they know the importance of win-win outcomes. The second tribe is what I call the dialogue tribes. They are officials and diplomats from the dialogue partner countries. Now, when ASEAN was created in 1967, the main reason was to shield Southeast Asia from major power rivalry. But ASEAN also knew that it was important to engage these major powers. So the dialogue system was created. The dialogue system provided avenue for political dialogue between ASEAN and these major powers. And these major powers also supported ASEAN by supporting them in their development projects, cultural programs, providing scholarships, etc. This intense competition between the dialogue partners pushes and pulls ASEAN in different directions. And this is a major challenge for ASEAN. The challenge is to accommodate their competition without breaking down internal harmony within ASEAN. This is something that ASEAN is still learning. The third tribe is what I call the Track 1.5 tribe. They are made up of officials from think tanks such as the Institutes of Strategic and International Studies, or ISIS. They operate within their own networks. They follow the developments of ASEAN very, very closely, but they also participate from time to time in some ASEAN-led meetings, for example, the ASEAN Regional Forum. Through these kind of interactions, the ideas that they generate tends to permeate into ASEAN. The second component is the ASEAN chair. Now, in the early days of ASEAN, there was no ASEAN summit. They only met when there were significant or important external events. Therefore, it was only after the fall of Saigon in 1975 and after the American withdrawal from Vietnam did the ASEAN leaders feel it was important to meet in a summit. In 1976, that was when the first ASEAN summit was held. It was in Bali. Now that summit produced some of the foundational documents of ASEAN today, such as the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation and the Bali Concord. These summits then became more and more frequent. It became annual. Now it's being held twice a year. The leaders now see it as a golden opportunity to shine on the global stage and also to project themselves domestically. Additionally, the summit gives international prestige to the country. There is also one other thing that I want you to remember. Every ASEAN chair wants his chairmanship to be seen as successful. Therefore, it is an unspoken agreement between the member countries to give some leeway to the chair. In this way, the ASEAN chair has a certain leeway to shape the outcomes of the ASEAN meetings. And this makes the ASEAN chair a powerful player. Third component is process. It is dynamic. But as far as preparation, it begins with the informal ASEAN Foreign Ministers Retreat, which takes place around January every year. This is when the ASEAN ministers gather to informally take stock of what is happening around the world, what are the issues that ASEAN will have to grapple with, and the kind of position that they will be taking. The views of the think tanks on specific issues, for example, Myanmar, may also filter in. Also, the ministers will take into consideration the views expressed by the dialogue partners. In addition, the ASEAN chair also gets to test new ideas that they may wish to advance. It's a great mechanism because there is no reputational risk or any other kinds of risk. Malaysia, for example, used this retreat when it was chair in 2005, the radical idea of proposing an ASEAN charter. After the informal retreat, the senior officials will get to work. They would meet in series of meetings throughout the year to fine-tune, to process those issues that have been flagged out by the ministers before finally bringing it to the summit. The economic and social cultural affairs officials also follow the same process. For this calendar year, there are close to 1,000 ASEAN meetings. Can you imagine that? On any given day, there's at least one or two or maybe three ASEAN meetings taking place somewhere in Southeast Asia. So how does the whole thing work? The ASEANites are still largely in control because they set the agenda and they also chair the summit meetings. Although the dialogue partners try to influence the minds or the views of the chair through the interactions, by and large they also prefer ASEAN to be in charge of the whole process because they do not want their competitors to become influential too. So the ASEAN chair holds sway. So back to the question, is ASEAN useless? Absolutely not. Although it may not function like other organizations, it works in its own unique way, suited to the diverse membership of Southeast Asia. Its effectiveness comes from the balancing of the various interests of its members, accommodating the push and pull of the external forces, and leveraging the power of the chairmanship. This year, Laos is in the chair. It is a small and landlocked country. Therefore, its interests are connecting to the rest of ASEAN, enhancing its economic options. But next year, Malaysia will be in the chair. It will be followed by Philippines. Both are claimant states in the South China Sea. These two countries will have to address the South China Sea issue. Although it may seem that ASEAN's performance is uneven, but it will still continue to play an important role in regional stability.